Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. Senator Ruth Johnson is chair of the Michigan Senate Elections Committee and a former Secretary of State. Senator Johnson, thanks for joining me today.
It's great to be here.
So the Great Lakes Justice Center has filed suit in Wayne County seeking to block the certification of the vote there. The Trump campaign has filed a federal lawsuit seeking a similar outcome. It seems like what happened in Detroit during the ballot counting process was a real horror show. What can the legislature do to get to the bottom of it?
The first thing is we need to have an independent audit. And I did sign an affidavit asking for an independent audit of what happened in Detroit. Recounting is not going to help us because the allegations that we've received that are credible and been signed as affidavits have a lot of examples of things that aren't going to be found in a recount, such as people being coached how to vote, poll watchers, and I know that there's allegations there were a few rowdy people, but there's lots of cases that have been reported where the person was doing the right job, a good job, and they were pushed away. They didn't want them to watch, and the poll workers there is a long-term employee that they moved over to elections for that day that has signed an affidavit that it's very troubling because she was told that they were coaching who to vote for, and she witnessed that, and it started happening in October when they came in, and she was instructed by her supervisor not to ask for a driver's license number or any photo ID when they were trying to vote. And in Michigan, that is law, or sign an affidavit of identity. And she also wrote and signed the affidavit that said she observed a large number of people who came into the satellite location to vote in person, but they had already applied for an absentee ballot, and they were allowed to vote in person and not required to return the mailed-in absentee ballot or sign an affidavit that was lost. These are all against the law, and they're all integrity processes, and they need to be adhered to. And she goes on with many concerns that she had as a long-term worker for Detroit, and I'm sure that doesn't make her popular, but I give her a lot of credit for coming forward so that we can find out what happened, and that's why I have signed an affidavit asking for an independent audit so we can try to fix these problems. To be honest, I don't think it's going to have an impact on the outcome of the election, but we know the next election could be razor thin, and we tend to be a state that goes back and forth. And we need to know what happened, and then we need to do everything in our power to fix it legislatively and any other way that we can.
Well, and to that point, President Trump has said that the fight is not just about this election. If this kind of fraud is institutionalized, then why even have elections? What can the legislature do to ensure fraud that is being alleged can be stopped?
Well, one of the things we need to make sure that the challengers, and I don't care if they're Democrat or Republican, they're allowed to be there. When I have another affidavit that from a gentleman that used to be an attorney general for 8 years, and he has many allegations, and they're written much more in legal form, but evidently, when he left to get something to eat and tried to come back, they said there were too many people in the building, but he was one of them that counted as being there. He alleges he was blocked from seeing things, and he also alleges in the affidavit that he signed that they were running ballots in people's names that weren't the people that were there, and that would account for why the ballot numbers, the registration numbers, didn't match for the person who's voting. All of those things open up the system to a lack of integrity. And if there's one thing we need to count on in America is that there is integrity in the elections. The Secretary of State, the current Secretary of State, has done many things to take away integrity from the system that we work so hard to put in. And she mailed unsolicited absentee ballot applications to 7 million people. I believe that about 800,000 people were not voters of Michigan because they didn't live here or they died or they were non-citizens, and we had an example of someone that was under age 16. So when you send out 800,000 ballots or more to people that are not voters of Michigan and inviting them to vote to get a absentee ballot, it was an absentee ballot request that's pre-filled out. Some people mistakenly thought, oh, I get to vote in Michigan, and being a swing state. She also changed the definition of verify. When they're flagged, these voters are flagged in the qualified voter file as surrendering their license to another state. She sent them to them anyway, and they were pre-filled out, and then changed the definition of verify. You're supposed to call up the person and say, hey, Martha, I thought you and Sam moved to Florida. You got your license there. Can you tell me what's going on? She changed that definition to look into it, contact the person, to do nothing. Just take a look at it if it looks like their signature to accept it. Well, of course, their signature would match if they did take time, which we have affidavits saying that wasn't even done. It was right from the get-go that it was opened up to trouble. And we know in the August primary they couldn't rectify 72% of the absentee counting boards in Detroit in August. And overall, 48% of their precincts, including their absentees, couldn't be reconciled. Those are big problems. And it was interesting because the day after the August election, the Secretary of State got on TV and in the media and said how great it was. And then we have a canvass. It takes 2 weeks, so we don't have certified results yet. And then it goes to the state for 2 weeks. But the canvass boards evidently are having a lot of problems because things aren't adding up. That doesn't even count when they allowed somebody to vote a different ballot or coached people, followed them into the voting booth and coached them. None of those things are caught in a canvass. A canvass just is about numbers. But my reports are we're having a hard time getting through it, and that they will go past the statutory 2 weeks in some places to try to find out why it's different from how many people allegedly voted to how many ballots that they have.
So you have called for an audit. Is that a legal process? Explain exactly what an audit would do and what a legal outcome would be.
The audit for me as chair of elections in the Michigan Senate is to find out what went wrong, how the system was not used within the law to ensure integrity. I need to find out every single thing that was done or not done that strips away integrity so that we can look at how we can fix it for the next election. I think it's so important that people realize that our elections, or can feel that our elections have been done with integrity. And if you look at the percentage of people that believe that they're done with integrity, we have a growing number of people that are very concerned about it, including myself. And so I think we always called it secure and fair elections when I was Secretary of State. You must balance things. We got reports of third parties saying that college students don't have to have their driver's license here in Michigan, but we're a swing state, so they need to go register here with some kind of paperwork that shows they might be living on campus for a while. And then, of course, they were encouraged who to vote for. And I had one young man come to me that was very concerned and said that we were told to vote absentee because then we don't have to show ID, because in Michigan you're supposed to show ID or sign an affidavit. That's gaming the system, and it's in a way that's not appropriate. The fact that the Secretary of State, for the first time that I know of in the history of Michigan, has hijacked getting absentee ballot requests to the voters and sending it to a list that she knows was flagged in a subset of the qualified voter file of people that are moved, and them getting them and then telling the clerks who actually conduct the elections, 1,520 clerks, telling them not to verify it, even though there's some kind of problem where the vast majority should not have received anything. And in a court case, it said the local clerks, who are always the one that handles these, they may not send those unless somebody's asked for them. So she found a legal loophole because she sent them, so she didn't have to follow that court decision. Those are all the things that are happening that take away people's confidence in the integrity of our elections, and that they need to be fixed.
So in terms of your audit, the last time we talked, you wanted subpoena power to look into what happened during the counting of the August primary. ironically, in the very same location. What's the latest on that?
For some reason, I was not given subpoena power, so I could get in and try to stop some of these things from this next election. So I have used a vehicle that I think that might help after the fact by signing an affidavit that's asking the judge that we would have an independent audit. When you have a Secretary of State come on the phone, which they're very silent right now, if you've noticed, that said how great everything was, and then problem after problem, and even the Canvas Board, which is bipartisan for Wayne County, they unanimously asked for help in this general election to make sure it was done properly because of all the irregularities. So it's after the fact, which I wish it wasn't, but the Oversight Committee right now in the Senate, Ed McBroom, he's a very skilled young man. He is delving into it and using subpoena power, and I have a phone call, a Zoom call with him later today to go over what I have so that I can give that information to him.
So the Senate will have subpoena power to be able to obtain or receive, demand, whatever you want to say, documents from the Secretary of State, from the Detroit City Clerk, et cetera. The Senate will have that power.
Yes, they will have that power, and the Oversight Committee will look at everything. It's a very laborious task, and you know, there's nothing to subpoena that will let you know that people were coached on how to vote, told how to vote when they came in. From the affidavit that was signed by a long-term worker starting in October, they were pushing people to vote for other people. It won't be anything in the subpoena that will get us information on if poll workers were blocked, poll challengers were blocked from watching. There's many accusations of that, including affidavits, and so we'll look at, in elections, we'll look at everything and see what we might be able to remedy by law. I don't suspect everything will be able to be remedied by law, but we'll look at what we can do and then look at what our other options are to put integrity back in our elections in Michigan.
Right. So we're just about out of time, but I've written several stories over the last 10 days or whatever it has been at Breitbart about the allegations these dozens of people, and you've mentioned several of them, have made in these affidavits. I've asked the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson's office, several times if she's going to do an investigation to ensure the department's election rules and Michigan law were followed. They absolutely will not answer that question. Should the Secretary do her own investigation?
There's no doubt that the Secretary of State should, but she's made a number of promises to clerks and to the people that she simply hasn't followed through on. Like she said, she had software for all the 1,520 local clerks that conduct the election so that they could compare signatures. That simply was not accurate. It wasn't true. Sounded good on Frank Beckman, but it just wasn't true. There's all kinds of things that she has said or promised. She said the local clerks could send out the absentee ballot requests, and the clerk from Clinton Township, which has a heavy population, called right away and said, I want to do it myself. And anyone that's done a mass mailing knows it takes weeks to get ready. The Secretary of State's went out the next day. So there's some issues with integrity within the office and statements that are made. Yes, the Secretary of State should, and I would, as Secretary of State, do a comprehensive audit on everything to find out how to fix it. But I wouldn't count on it, and that's why I signed the affidavit asking the judge to allow an independent audit to happen. People deserve to know, and they deserve and want clean elections. We have a couple people on both sides of the aisle that will game the system, find loopholes, or cheat. That's not the rest of us. The rest of us want to know for sure whether our people that we supported won or lost fairly. And people can move on when they know that. But unfortunately, that's not the case, I don't believe, for myself with the current Secretary of State. And I'm very concerned. And I was, by the way, very bipartisan when I was there. I always had some people that were Democrats that sat at a table with me every Monday to go over what the issues were and how we could fix them. Nobody wants a partisan Secretary of State or judge. We want people that will stand up for what's right. And you'll take a little pressure from other people that want you to use that position, but you have to do the right thing as Secretary of State if we expect our state and nation to come together ever.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree.
And one other thing, we should all give thanks that we do have a country that we do get to vote in. Our vote does count. And while we have little blips here and there, we should be thankful that we can fix them. So everybody should enjoy their Thanksgiving.
Yes, thank you. And I hope that you and your Senate colleagues and your House colleagues get to the bottom of what happened and do whatever you can to try and stop that from happening again in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate your support in getting out accurate information and also wanting what's right, not specifically for a person to win or lose, but really just doing the right thing.
Thank you.